Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome in on a Wednesday morning. How about that playoff action last night, huh? Predictably, Oklahoma City handles the Lakers pretty easily. Austin Reeves did not shoot the ball at all. My gosh, 3 for what? Bad night. Thunder predictably win Game 1, and Colorado pours in 5 more goals. The Avs beat Minnesota again. They're up 2-0 in that series. They've won 6 straight playoff games. They are storming through the Western Conference playoffs. All right, we're going to switch gears now and talk a little soccer. The Utah Royals, who've had a short, tortured history, might have finally gotten it right. They've won 4 in a row this year, looking good, trying to make it 5 in a row. Tonight against Houston during yesterday's show, we had Brecken Mozingo on, who went to Alta High, then to UCLA, transferred, left UCLA after 1 year, went to BYU, had a great career there, and has now been with the Royals for, through some of the tough times here the last couple of years, and now enjoying the good times. She joined PK and I for a few minutes. Here's Brecken Mozingo.
Brecken, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing so good. How are you guys?
We're doing well, and it looks like taking the league by storm. Is that a fair assessment? Surprise? I just read something on that very thing.
I would say so, yes. Yes.
You've been with the team for a while, and it has been a struggle. And that's not really how your career went from Alta High School to BYU. Well, brief stop at UCLA for a year, and then BYU. There was a lot of winning going on. How hard was it to push through a losing season and another losing season and get to this point where you've won 4 in a row and you're rolling?
It's taken a lot. I think mentally, physically, all that. I think from all different sides and perspectives, from the players, from the coaches, ownership, even the fans. Like, we have experienced a lot together, and thankfully, in this year 3, things have started to roll in our favor, and that's just a testament, though, to everything that we've done the past few years. So it's kind of like, okay, thank goodness, about time, but obviously we still have a whole season ahead of us. I was looking at the schedule the other day, and we've only gotten through like 8 games, and we have a whole nother 20-something games to get through. So it is too early to tell, but we are really, really liking the direction that we're heading.
Go back 10 years. You're 25, and if I do my math, 10 years ago you'd be 15, and you're starting to make your mark at the high school level. What did you envision as far as where soccer could take you, and did you ever imagine you'd be playing for what amounts to your local team?
I honestly had no idea. I am honestly still living out a God-given blessing each day that I'm on contract here with the Utah Royals. But yeah, when I was 15 and little Brecken at that time she definitely just had her eyes set on college and making sure that she made her mark in college. And then once she got to being able to potentially look at playing pro, then she would get there. But I don't think pro was even in my radar when I was 15.
And now you're playing professionally less than 4 miles from where you played in high school. Do the rest of the players, some of whom traveled halfway around the world like you, and think, no way. There's no way this is happening?
I know. No, it's crazy. Seriously, each day I'm very, very grateful.
How much did college prepare you for it then?
College was awesome. Definitely interesting. Jen Rockwood, my girl, she's amazing, and she definitely had her ways in terms of prepping a team, making sure that they were ready for a outstanding season. She was very, very successful in what she did. In terms of some of the other, even just tracking what we did at practice in terms of meters and how fast we would run, she didn't really go too deep into that. She was more so just okay, if you can ball, you can ball, and you're going to be out on the field. So that's been one interesting thing in the pros, is just getting used to the stats and the numbers behind things and all of that stuff. It's a lot more science-based, where it's an equation and all that stuff, which is a little bit takes me off, but I love it, and I've grown accustomed to it, this being year 3, and college was awesome. Loved my teammates. My teammates got me ready. Coaches got me ready by giving me some minutes, which, again, I'm still grateful for to this day, that I was able to get the minutes I did in college. But, yeah, it was a great experience. Got me ready.
Brecken Mozingo joining us, Utah Royals. What has been the difference? Why are you winning now when it was such a struggle for so long? What's happened?
I think it was just a mental block, I think, in front of us. I think now the chemistry that we've had, majority of our starters are returning from last year. I think there was one or two positions that were kind of open for a new player that we maybe picked up or whatever, and it has really just come unfolded. These girls and these players know how to play together, and they're very successful at what we do, and we're kind of learning each other's strengths, and we know what each other is good at to make sure that we utilize that in the game. So I think that's a big thing, is just us building on each other's strengths and building that chemistry, and just overall realizing what type of team and culture we want to have for the rest of the year and for the rest of the venture for the Utah Royals being here in Utah.
All right, there is Brecken Mozingo, and tonight it is the Utah Royals and the Houston Dash, 8 o'clock at America First Field. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to pivot to the Utah Mammoth. The season is over. What do the executives have in plan for this summer? Bill and Chris Armstrong with the media next. Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome in. Bill and Chris Armstrong, the Brain Trust, meeting with the media. What do the Utah Mammoth have planned for the offseason? Here they are.
I want to start by thanking our fans for their unbelievable passion, their investment, their support through the entirety of the season, but in particular during the playoffs. They put Utah on the map as a hockey market. From the deafening atmosphere at the Delta Center to the plaza parties to the thousands of fans who showed up for us in Vegas, the bars, the restaurants, the flags on the houses, the positivity, enthusiasm throughout the city and across the state was deeply meaningful to all of us. I want to acknowledge with appreciation our ownership group, Ryan and Ashley Smith, our players, our coaches, our staff, our front office, and all of our employees across SCG who gave us absolutely everything they had to make this an unforgettable first season as the Utah Mammoth. I'm proud of our group for reaching one of our stated objectives of reaching the playoffs for the first time in franchise history. Indeed, there were many positives throughout this year that we can add to our foundation and continue to build upon. That being said, we're sitting up here unsatisfied and unhappy that our season is over. We have a lot of work to do. That work began the morning after Game 6, and it will continue until we drop the puck again in September. As our players have mentioned and as Bear alluded to, we don't take for granted that it's going to be even harder to get into this position again, and we will stop at nothing as an organization to better ourselves, to improve this team, and to meet that challenge. We play in the toughest league in professional sports for the hardest trophy to win, and we are excited about the challenge and embracing the opportunity to reach our objective of still playing hockey at this time next season. So with that, I'll open it up to questions unless, Bill, you have anything to add.
Yeah, I'd just like to say when we first came in and we took this stage, I guess, for the press conference, you heard me say those words, meaningful games. And we hope to win some really important, meaningful games down the stretch in our first year, and I believe we did that. We actually finished really strongly. And then, the next year we came and sat at this table and said, we'd like to win those meaningful games, like have some big, huge games, but, kind of get into the playoffs. And someone said, make the playoffs? Well, we said, yeah, and we announced our goals. We said, hey, we want to make the playoffs. And I think, the coaches and the players did an incredible job. If you think about our stretch at the end, we won 5 games to clinch and take wild card 1 with authority. And that was an eye-opener, and it was a shot of confidence for us, and you could feel it with our group. They rallied behind that, and you'd walk by the players, and you could just feel it. There was a calmness. There was a lot of confidence that we could do some damage in the playoffs. And it's interesting because we're all competitive people or we wouldn't be at this level, and we go play a great playoff series and we're all unhappy. and not to say, as a worry as a GM, when you get into those situations that you actually make the playoffs, you want to be competitive, and you're nervous about that because you want to be in the fight and you want to get in, but when you get in, you want to be competitive. And I thought our coaches did a great job with our players preparing and battling. But the issue that we had is that when we got in there, we're pretty darn good. And there's a fine line in our sport between winning or losing. And for our growth of our team, we have to suffer a little bit of pain to learn to walk that line a little bit better. And if we can do that in the big moments moving forward with this group, we're going to have a good chance to take it a run as far as we can to the Stanley Cup. And that's the goal of this organization. And like Chris said, the fans, we got to play 3 unbelievable home games that were spectacular. And I'd like to thank our fans not only for the year, but for those games were incredible. We'll never forget that. Nobody involved with our organization will ever forget that. Ryan and Ashley Smith have done an amazing job at this facility that we sit today, allowing us to be an elite franchise, and what they've created at the Delta Center and just the environment there is amazing. I also want to thank you guys. You've been tremendously positive towards our team from the moment we've come in. Appreciate your support going through the process.
I'll start with Bill. You just mentioned it. Sometimes you have to go through a little bit of pain. A lot of the players talked about that too in their exit interviews. How will a strong off season and their preparation this summer help spring you guys to that next step next season?
Ooh, great question. If you look at the 16 teams that got in last year, only 10 repeated. And 2 of those teams that didn't get in, one won the Stanley Cup and one won the President's Trophy. So our message when we were leaving, everybody was unhappy, but they were enthused about training and how hard we have to play to get back into the playoffs. It's going to be a battle every single day, and game 1 is like for us is game 7. So it's the team left not saying, oh, we're so great. They left, hey, we got a battle. It's going to take all summer to get back in shape and really push the pace right here. So our team left hungry, and that's the most important thing.
Chris, when it comes to the leadership that was brought in going into this season, like Nate Schmidt, other players like that, even Mackenzie Weegar at the trade deadline, something that was said a lot was how calm everyone was because the leaders were on the bench telling everyone, it's okay, we're getting through this, keep pushing. How have you seen not only your leadership group lead, but some of the younger guys starting to adapt to what their leaders are doing to them?
Yeah, Catherine, I think it's a great question. I think there's been tremendous growth in our leadership group as a whole this season, and they're very complementary to one another. I mean, just notably, I think, Kels took amazing steps this year as a leader, how he handled all of the adversity in his personal life and continued to guide this team forward and to give us his best every day was truly remarkable and certainly emblematic of the character of that individual. Lawson Krause, Bear mentioned earlier, you could see the steps that he took. It started with his dissatisfaction with his season last year and all the work that he put in and that determined effort that he came to camp with, and really, I think, found his voice within the leadership group. The players with experience that we brought in, I think it's invaluable in the sense that they can share with our young players what things are going to feel like, what things are going to look like, what to expect. The guys have to go through those experiences themselves to really accrue that experience. However, I think having those cornerstones in the room that can provide that even-keeled, that level of calm, and set that expectation was very helpful to us in embracing the challenge of the first round against Vegas.
Andre told us to ask you guys this question. What are the off-season needs that you recognize, especially in the playoffs?
Well, it's great to learn about your club. I think you learn a little bit of, and Bear talked about it, the adaptation that Smoltzy and Kels had between the first couple of games was incredible to see them, learn to get into that playoff mode and play. There's a lot of evaluation that still has to be done. It's hard to say for our club. We've got a lot of younger players. We're probably different than most clubs because we've got 7 really good prospects. I believe they're all first-rounders that sit outside our organization that are pushing to get in. We've got to do some more evaluation on them. We've got to do some more evaluation with our players and who's coming back and who's going. So there's still more work to be done before we kind of dive in and put it on the board exactly what our needs are.
Adding on to that, is there a move you made either last offseason or leading up to the trade deadline that you look back at and say that worked, and how will that help you with the moves you and the decisions you'll need to make this offseason?
Yeah, good question. I think we brought in Uyghur. And I think everybody knows him as a person. It's hard. There's not enough time between trade deadline and when you actually fire up for the playoffs to kind of. It's like moving into a new house. It takes a little bit of time to feel comfortable. So Weeks jumped in there, and he really made a difference for us. It took him a little bit of time to get comfortable, I think, with the system, and just he had lived in Calgary for a while. It wasn't an easy transition for him, but I liked what he did, especially how big and tough Vegas was and how hard he played. It really helped us, and I think Nate Schmidt was the off-season winner for us. Smitty just kind of solidified him and Johnny as a top 4D, and they were lights out for us. I think one was plus 42 during the course of the year, so they were dynamic as two top D in our team, top 4D.
Chris, I've got an easy one for you, and then Bill, I've got a few tougher ones for you. But Chris, you talked about the fan base. How are you seeing this organization, this fan base, kind of create an identity together and create tradition and all of those things that go into establishing a great hockey organization?
It's a great question, Cole. I think the beauty of all of this is that we've done it all together with our fan base. Our fans guided us to the name, the Utah Mammoth. They've been a part of building meaning into that identity with us. And being in that constant two-way communication with our fan base and with the community about what's working, what could be better, what they like to see different, and being pliable and able to adapt to those things on the fly, I think has helped us start to find a uniquely Utah experience for this franchise. And that was really what we set out to do from the very beginning. As Ryan and Ashley stated, this is about Utah, for Utah, by Utah. And we've obviously been moving at a very fast clip to put all this together from our inaugural season to the brand launch of the Utah Mammoth, and now just completing our first season as the Utah Mammoth. But we've really tried to stay in constant dialogue and communication with our fans, monitor the discussion in chat rooms and online to see what's working and what's not, and really try to make them part of this experience in every way we can.
All right, Bill. The players talked a lot about expectations on Sunday, and they said that
I know where you're going with this.
They said that this is playoffs are the expectation now.
Yeah.
Now you're 2 for 2 since being in Utah on setting expectations and meeting those goals.
Yeah.
You've now made the playoffs. Where do you go from here, and what do you look to accomplish next season?
That's an easy one to answer. We got one thing on our mind. That's playoffs. Get into playoffs. You think about it, Stanley Cup winner didn't get back. President's Trophy didn't get what our goal is to get back. And with Coach Tournay and our players, like I said, they left their, coach is hungry and the players left hungry. But it's hard. Think about that. They won the Stanley Cup and they won the President's Trophy. They didn't get back into the playoffs. So our expectations are to get back in. That's the number one.
Talking about players' performances and what have you, I was wondering if you could kind of assess the season that J.J. Peterka had, and in addition to that, do you feel like he found his role? Do you feel like you guys kind of put him in a position to find that?
J.J. is unique because of his skill set, his speed and talent. And the transition, I don't think it was exactly easy for him. I thought he excelled at times. I think he probably be the first to tell you he's looking for a little bit more consistent performance during the course of the year. And for him, he can move around. He's kind of like a one-man skill show, and he's got the ability to kind of score from everywhere. I think it takes time. I don't think some transitions are as easy as others. I think for him, he came into a team that's highly competitive. A lot of the lines are made up, and we play a certain system that's not sometimes easy for certain players to kind of take on. I think it's harder for skill guys to kind of sometimes jump in. There's a lot of responsibility. And now we're also playing at a higher level, trying to get into the playoffs and also win in the playoffs, and there's more required. So I like him. I think his skill set's really good. I know JJ just built a rink in his house, so I'm pretty sure he's going to be hungry and skating all summer.
I would just add, I thought JJ had a great self-assessment in his exit interview with you guys the other day, and he showed that he's committed to being a vital part of this franchise.
Bill, you mentioned how hard it is to get back to the playoffs after making it. You also mentioned how many prospects you do have, though. How do you manage an offseason where you have that many guys kind of fighting for spots while still trying to build a roster to get back to the playoffs?
Yeah, we want to encourage our prospects to come in and try and make our club. You never want to take a dream away from a prospect, and you don't know. Sometimes they can just show up and they earn their way in, and we want to make sure that our prospects that are probably seeing this press conference that, come ready. Be fighting for a job. There's opportunity there. Our team is a good team. It's changed. I think we're different than when Dylan Guenther entered the NHL, and hey, we needed one guy to score, and now our team's there. It's a harder team to make. It doesn't mean they can't make it, but they got to come in and they got to take somebody's job. Let's be clear about that. They got to show up in the best shape, and they got to earn the right to take that job. So it's going to be competitive. And I like that. Instead of coach out there whipping them, they just look across the bench and they're like, oh, wow, that guy's pretty good. I'm not losing my job. This is a good team. This is a good place to play. I want my job. And I love that compete coming to camp. It's such a great thing. Players can sense it from the moment they arrive. We got some young players that can play. It's going to be a heck of a training camp.
And Bill, early on, you were talking about fine lines. Mm-hmm. And so the Mammoth were 53 seconds away from a 3-game-1 lead in this series. When you look to this offseason, be it free agency, trade, development of existing players, etc., where do you see solving that 53-second problem?
Well, there's a little bit of pain you have to go through. You look at Tampa Bay, and they lost out in 4 games, I think, to Columbus. When I was with the Blues, we got beat up every year by the Chicago Blackhawks that went on to win, and LA Kings that went on to win, and they were painful losses, and we got tougher every single time. And without those teams, we would have never won a championship. So I don't necessarily think it's in someone that we can acquire. I think it's that pain that when we're going through that situation again, we're probably a little bit better going through it, from coaching to players, and it's a hard lesson to learn because it changed the outcome of a series, but it is something that you have to go through.
I just want to add, Bill, because it's been brought up and mentioned in Bears press conference as well. We obviously have to be better. We have to close those games, and our details have to be better in those situations. But at the same time, I do want to give credit to our opponent in Vegas. They were the number 1 team in the NHL all season long in the third period. I think they have 13 come from behind victories when trailing in the third period between playoffs, between regular season and playoffs now. So I do think, all of this said, we have to tip our cap to our opponent. They were the better team in the series, and they beat us.
Chris, when it comes to goals, somebody told me one time that when you set goals, they need to be reasonable, specific, attainable, and time-bound. So if you go way back to the beginning of the season when making the playoffs was the goal, how important, in your perspective, was it to set that then?
Yeah, I think setting intention, Matty, is very important. Like you have to know what your destination is, even though everything is about the process to get there. And I think we do a good job of that inside of our organization, throughout all levels of our organization, of being on the same page and having clarity around what it is that we're trying to attain and what it's going to take to get there. And I think if you have that in the back of your mind, and Bill's a great proponent of writing things down, writing things on the board, writing things on the mirrors in the bathroom, so that we're constantly being reminded of what those goals and intentions are. That will only, I think, help to refine your habits and your routines to achieve them.
Bill, one for you. Since you became a GM in this league, you've built a ladder, if you will, of picks. That almost seems like it's transitioned into a ladder of players on your roster. You've got the established veterans, you've got the emerging veterans, Cooley, Guenther, guys like that, and now you have all these prospects underneath that are trying to get up. Is it, as you move forward, is it more tweaking now than anything in terms of trying to make that roster 5-10% better?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, you used to come to training camp and there's tryouts. You used to come and put guys on the board and be like, I don't know if that works. I think we're kind of past that. We know that Schmaltz, Krause and Keller go together. and they're probably going to be our first line showing up for camp. So I think we're at that good stage where there's people that we have some interest in. We've got to do some more evaluation and go through the process. But looking at some of the guys that we could add and some tweaks that we could possibly make, and maybe it's a guy from the minor leagues, maybe it's one of our prospects to put in those things. It's a good spot to be in. You're not reinventing the board. The board's there. The players are there. It's a good time for us as an organization. Now it's just about finding that right fit, the player that go in there to get some chemistry, and I think there's some good little tweaks that we can make with some players also in house, and that can really kind of help us tidy up some areas I think that we can improve on.
Chris and Bill, would love some insight from the both of you on this. Sports teams, businesses, the most successful ones have great culture. And from day one, that's been an important part here at Smith Entertainment Group and, of course, the Utah Mammoth. So of meeting the expectations last year, this year, still more meat left on the bone. Obviously, as you guys made mention of, the Winter Classic coming next year, the great things that happen on and off the ice this season. I'm curious how the culture here empowers you guys to be the best versions of yourselves day in and day out, and how you've seen that progress to get to this point.
You want me to start with that one? I think the way people show up and support each other here speaks volumes about the setting the tone for how we want to conduct ourselves and how we want to be part of that. That's been self-evident since we arrived in Utah, all of us together, many for the first time coming here, was that sense of pride for having another major professional sports team in the city, and the way that people show up and care for each other in this state is extremely motivating and energizing for our entire group. Culture of our organization starts at the top with Ryan and Ashley, and it's very clear spending any amount of time with them. It's all that they are doing with this platform is using it as a means to give back to the community and make Utah better than they found it, and put Utah on the map for the rest of the world as a place that people want to come and visit and stay and be a part of. And I think that's sort of the guiding principle for all of us.
Yeah, I'll just tell a quick story. Chris talking to me about this thing they're building, and when you're GM, you're so preoccupied with whether you won or lost that who you're going to talk to that day. And he's like, they're building this thing, and I'm like, yeah. Then all of a sudden I see the Mammoth, and I'm like, oh my God, that thing is incredible. It's got smoke coming out of it. The detail on this thing, I'm like, it's like, and that's what our company that we're very fortunate to work for is all about. It's from the logo, how well it's designed, it's all the details. We get to work inside a company that has such high standards, they blow everything out of the water. And for us, that's an inspiration. It's us walking out of this building knowing we're in the most elite practice facility in the National Hockey League. We have great pride in that, and that inspires us every single day. It's like, they're not going to accept anything down here. It's going to be up here. And I think everybody knows that inside our organization. They're always trying to do the best. They want the best. They expect the best, and it sets really high standards. And it's a great place to be. It's an awesome place. And I haven't got to ride on the Mammoth, but I'm hoping Chris and I can take it out for the 4th of July parade and yell crest. It'd be great.
T-shirt cannons, but no, and I hope it's not lost on people that we're obviously in the winning business, but we're also all having a great time. And we feel very fortunate and very lucky to be doing what we're doing for a living, and to work in this sport, and to work for people like Ryan and Ashley Smith, and to be stewards of this community asset for Utah. And I think that's part of what we want to come across, is we're having fun doing this with our fans and with all of you.
All right, there are Bill and Chris Armstrong. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Brian Geltzeiler talking NBA playoffs, and the Jazz got a couple of stars who are overpaid. His opinion on that next. Stay with us. Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. Brian Geltzeiler joined us during yesterday's show. Love having him on. He comes in from the tri-state area, loves to talk Jersey with PK, loves to talk NBA playoffs. He's right in the middle of that whole Knicks-Sixers thing. And I'm curious, the Jazz have two really good players at the top of the roster, but are they really worth $50 million each? Here's Brian Geltzeiler. And it was yesterday, so of course we couldn't talk to him about Oklahoma City throttling the Lakers, but I think we all knew how that was going to go anyway. Here's Brian Geltzeiler with PK and I.
Brian, welcome back to the show.
Hi, guys. My pleasure. How we doing?
We are doing well. I suspect you are doing better. The Springsteen music there. You and PK both have the Jersey thing going. Northern Jersey guys, not Southern
North Jersey, not Northern, just North.
Philly, North Jersey.
Taylor ham instead of pork roll, right?
Yeah, there it is.
The hell is pork roll? It's Taylor ham.
Oh, South Jersey people. Hey, I finally figured out, is your brother Barry?
He is.
I finally figured, I got my relatives. My father had 9 siblings and my mother had 10, right? Big Italian family.
Oh, wow.
On my mother's side in West Orange. I finally figured out there's got to be some relationship. So I was bored one day and I started getting on Facebook, blah, blah, blah. And my cousin's son follows your brother. So we do have a connection.
We have a connection there. Well, I don't. So it's one of those things where I wonder, listen, my brother's wonderful and we're very, very close, but he is quite the opinionated fellow on social media about certain things. So there's part of me is wondering, do I apologize for him? Do I hide my head? Or do I just wear it all with pride? And I think I'm going to take the latter and wear it all with pride. He is who he is. I love him for who he is. And but my brother is, to say the least, is a very, very interesting social media character.
Oh, no, I didn't see any of that. I was just going through the names, and I saw Geltzeiler and Barry and you're Brian. I had to figure, well, that's an obvious connection there.
That is one of what my parents did to us, PK, which is the most embarrassing thing in the world. So my parents were Bert and Barbara, so they made the decision to name all of us with B's. So my oldest brother is Bruce. And then there's my brother Barry, and then there's me as Brian. And my mother used to drive around in a white Cadillac with 5 B's on the license plate. Like, you can't hide, okay? And my mother, who, God bless her, 94 years old, still going strong, okay, was never the best driver in the world. So, like, she cut somebody off not paying attention, and everybody always knew who it was. We never skated on that stuff, boys.
Nice.
I'm curious, given where you are from, and given the fact that the Rangers, the Devils, and the Islanders all missed the NHL playoffs this year, and then the Sixers knock out the Celtics and get the Knicks, and the Knicks blow them out in Game 1. I'm thinking the NBA right now is front and center in that part of the world like few times the last, few decades. It's got to be the biggest thing, what everybody's talking about right now. Am I right?
Listen, everybody could be great right now. The Rangers could be great. Okay, the Devils could be great. The Islanders could be great. They all could be great right now. Okay? Mm-hmm. But the thing is, all right, if the Knicks are doing this, none of it even matters. Okay, listen, Yankees are playing great. Granted, it's May. Okay, Mets are terrible. Everybody could be great, and when the Knicks are doing this, they are the biggest thing. So it's the fact that no one else is doing anything here, and it's just the Knicks, only enhances it more. The Knicks are the most popular team in the area. They have a national following. They have the most celebrity fans, whether it's Hollywood, entertainment, sports, media. This is the Knicks, and right now they're hot as a pistol. Listen, last night's game is a very important understanding of last night's blowout, which was different than the Game 6 blowout of Atlanta, in the respect that Philly was gassed last night. Yeah. You look at the minutes, okay, that Philly's guys played on Sunday or Saturday night in that Game 7. Okay, just to give you a little bit of flavor there, all right? Paul George, 41. Joel Embiid, 39. Maxey, 45. Edgecombe, 43. Okay, in an emotional game that came down the stretch and they had to finish it in the last 2 minutes, I mean, is it really that surprising that they come to the Garden 48 hours later and look gassed? They were gassed last night. And the Knicks took full advantage of all of it. Nick Nurse has got to make some defensive adjustments regarding Embiid. Embiid got attacked very, very badly by the Knicks last night. They put him in every action. He was playing drop coverage with plays into all of Jalen Brunson's strengths, and Brunson had all the space he wanted to operate. That's got to be an adjustment that gets made. But Philly, listen, Maxey's a brutal matchup for the Knicks. He's such a hard matchup. He was not a brutal matchup last night, mostly because he didn't have his legs. He just didn't have the burst you normally see him have. But I would think that Philadelphia is going to come out more rested. There's no travel now. Not that it's a big travel series up and down the turnpike here, but Philly gets to kind of rest up in New York today, get a good night's sleep tonight and come out tomorrow, kind of different tack, different attitude, and see how they do. There was definitely a hangover from Game 7 of the Boston series.
I don't think there's any question of that. And we see that from time to time in the NBA playoffs. Remember the Jazz had one when they played Seattle that they came off a tough series. I don't remember what it was, but I know they had to go over there in less than 48 hours and play. And plus they were an older team, and they got worked. Basically had to give them a game. So we'll see what happens there. As far as just the general perspective from the East, what level of confidence do you have that anybody from the East has a chance, if they get an advance out of the East, to be able to compete with? I would think it would be Oklahoma City. We'll see how it plays out there.
Well, all right, so it depends. With Oklahoma City, it depends on one thing, and I don't think it's going to matter in this round just because – if we do see Luka Doncic play in the series, it will be towards the latter half of the series. But I think for OKC, they can get out of the West without Jalen Williams. If they face the Knicks in the finals, they're going to need Jalen Williams because they're going to need that second high-end scoring wing that you could run offense through to make the Knicks occupy another defender. And I think that's very, very important in that series. I think if it's San Antonio, and again, San Antonio gets knocked off by Minnesota last night, and Minnesota has got as much fight in them as any team you'll see here in the NBA. I think San Antonio, the matchup for the Knicks is a very, very tough matchup for them. I think the Knicks could absolutely beat San Antonio. But I think for OKC, fully healthy, I don't know that there's anybody in the East that could really push them. With all that said, we felt that way last year about the Indiana Pacers going in to play OKC in an NBA final, and they took them to 7 games, and they were right there in the game at halftime of Game 7. So you kind of never know what shakes out here, but I think the Knicks look great right now. With all that said, OKC all hands on deck. It's outside of San Antonio. It's very hard to see any team in the league right now beat them in a 7-game series.
Did Minnesota mostly ride playoff experience? The fact they've been in Western Conference Finals and the Spurs are where they are for the first time. It's a 2-point game in San Antonio. There was a lot going on in that game. We've been hearing a lot about playoff experience because Vegas just used it to beat the Mammoth. We were told it was going to happen, and then it did. Should I think the same thing about that Minnesota-San Antonio series, or do you see, hey, that's one game and there'll be other storylines that matter as we go forward?
Minnesota is a very interesting case here because this was the team on several occasions over the course of the season looked like from a chemistry standpoint they were ready to crumble. And maybe no bigger event for them during the regular season was the 4 to 6 weeks that Julius Randle played sulking because his name was thrown into Giannis trade rumors. And, Randle, who wasn't necessarily thrilled being traded out of New York, but has adjusted to Minnesota, loves this team, loves his teammates, loves the city. And Julius is, he wears his feelings on his sleeve. That's who the guy is. And he does it in a way that can affect the rest of the team. But at some point here, and I credit Jade McDaniels, they all pulled it together because McDaniels became as much as Anthony Edwards is the face of that team and their best player and all that, McDaniels became the public-facing symbol of this: we are tough, we are brash, and we think we can beat anybody at any point in time, and we're going to not only talk the talk, we're going to walk the walk. And so when Anthony Edwards went out, McDaniels was able to step into a role that he had never stepped into before, and boy, was he good at it. And so you kind of look at that swagger across the board. Then you get a situation last night, and guys, I can't emphasize how important this is to a team like Minnesota, where Anthony Edwards was coming back and he's on a minutes limit. The best way for a coach to manage a minutes limit with a player like Anthony Edwards is to bring him off the bench. Because it gives you more options later in the game on how you want to massage those minutes and where you want to play them. To have a guy of Anthony Edwards' caliber, an all-NBA guy, a guy that's been an MVP candidate in the past, be like, oh, yeah, dude, I'm in. I'm cool coming off the bench. That sends a message up and down this roster about the we. and that the we is more important than the me, and I don't need my ego massage. We're all here with the same goal. And I think for Minnesota, there is a togetherness that has happened. And listen, last year, what was that togetherness that drove them to the conference finals? That togetherness had everything to do with the fact, as fractured as they were, they all loved Joe Ingles, and Joe Ingles got a start in front of his autistic son, who had never seen him play on an NBA floor last year, and it galvanized this group. This year, it's been McDaniel's brash talking, but now Anthony Edwards coming off the bench last night and doing it willingly and playing really well and really spirited basketball. They're all about the we right now, and they are so dangerous when they're that because they have a bunch of really good parts that fit. The other thing that's been an enormous factor for them in the last couple of games is the buy-in of Terrence Shannon. Terrence Shannon Jr. He's a very talented player. He's a very athletic player, a guy that I think was underdrafted and being taken in the 20s. But part of the problem with him was that he wanted to do his own thing on the floor and didn't necessarily buy into the offensive scheme, broke off plays too much. And Chris Finch last week was very matter-of-fact about that publicly. All of a sudden, you're getting Shannon's buy-in, and I love Dante DiVincenzo. With Shannon playing like this, they don't even really miss him. And that's the crazy part. They did this last night with Ayo Dosunmu, who, remember, won them a game in the Denver series, scoring 43 points. Minnesota's got this next man up mentality that's very, very hard to replicate. And they got athletes, and they got guys that got a lot of dog in them. And they're going to be very, very tough out for anybody in these playoffs.
How much stock do you put in guys who put up decent or very good numbers on teams that don't win and are basically losing teams? And where I'm going with this specifically is Markkanen and Keontae George.
You know, so I think you have to look at every player individually when you're looking at that basis, so to speak. And I say it in this way. I have no doubt in my mind that Larry Markkanen can and will be at some point a very productive player on a winning team. All of those abilities are right in there for him. And I think he can do that, and I think he can do that relatively easily. I really do. I worry a little bit about George because of the ball dominance, frankly. I really do. I think that the ball dominance of Keontae George makes it that if you do have other players around you, are you going to be willing to give it up? Or in late game situations, are you going to be willing to pass the ball to find the guy for the right play? I mean, listen, I go back to Game 6 of the Toronto Raptors series against the Cavs. You know, Scotty Barnes made a decision late in that game when they needed a shot. Scotty Barnes is clearly the best player on that team, but he passed the ball to R.J. Barrett for an open shot. Could you see Keontae George doing something like that in a big spot? At this stage of his career, probably not. And so when you go to those two players, it completely depends upon the individual player. Do you play well with others? That is the big answer, because if you do play well with others, even if you're on a bad team and you can put up numbers, if you're a guy that plays well with others, you can be a solution and a major piece on a winning team. I do think Markkanen plays well with others. I worry a little bit about Keontae George. And I'll say this, he's a young player, and I think he's got a lot of potential. But I think in some ways, depending upon how this team shakes out next year, there's going to be moments where Collier's the better fit with the ball in his hands because of how much more willingly he moves the ball and sets guys up, because between Markkanen and Jaren Jackson and Ace Bailey, there's other shot makers on this team outside of Keontae George. He's going to have to, his big challenge going into next year is, how do I use those pieces around me for the greater good of the overall team? And I think that's something that Will Hardy's going to have to work with him on, but I do think of what we've seen so far, that may be a little bit of a challenge.
Of the many big decisions the Jazz have this summer, what kind of contract does Walker Kessler get, and what kind of contract will Walker Kessler agree to? And we've had multiple people tell us, in this era, you got to be very careful about giving a guy an extra, $5, $8, $10 million to make him happy, because you will paint yourself into a corner financially. And I'm curious if you think Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr., as good as they are, I'm not here to debate they're good, but are they $50 million worth of good? Because on average, that's about what they're going to make over the next 3 years. A little less next year, a little more further down the line. Are they $35, $40, or $45 million players, and they got a little much, and the Jazz are going to be painted in a corner financially? What do you think?
So let's look at the second half of the question first. The reason the Jazz were able to get Jaren Jackson for some mid to low tier first round draft capital was because of the contract. That's because they're willing to pay him. So that kind of answers your question right there. Is Markkanen overpaid? He is. And Markkanen's overpaid, because if the Jazz went to trade him right now, they'd be eminently disappointed at the offers, not because of the player Larry Markkanen is, but because of the contract. So now let's get to Kessler. Here's the conundrum the Jazz have with Kessler. If you let him go out into the open market and dictate his value, it only takes one dumb team to turn around and offer him 4 years at $140 million. That's all it does. One dumb team. And all of a sudden, you're stuck now with a front line that you're paying $135, $140 million to. And because if you want to keep him, or you let him go, and now all of a sudden you're playing smaller, you have a voided center. We're trying to figure it out with Kyle Filipowski or bringing Nurkic back on a small deal. Like it's and maybe that is the answer. Who knows? But I don't know, because the other thing with Kessler is this. Hasn't been available all that much. Like, I don't know that you want to get committed there. And I think for the Jazz here, like, listen, they had opportunities to trade Walker Kessler and get a first-round pick at least. I mean, I know they wanted 2 to 3, and that wasn't necessarily given to them. But I don't think you can go backwards and say because we turned down a meaningful trade proposals for him in the past that we're going to overpay him now. That was also before you had Jaren Jackson in the fold. And so you have to make the best next decision going forward, even if you look back on some of these Kessler decisions and say, well, we probably should have done that, but we didn't know we were going to get Jaren Jackson. We chose not to do that. With all that said, I think the roll of the dice is to turn around and let Kessler go find his own market. Now, there's dangers in that. Obviously, the one dumb team danger. And at that point, you could try to negotiate a sign and trade if you can. So there's that part of it. The second part of it is if you do end up deciding to match him at a lesser number than what he thinks he's worth, because that was out there in the open market, now you get the Gordon Hayward situation, which is he comes back, he signs the contract, but he's pissed. And he knows when this contract's up, there's no way he's staying. And so that's, you don't want to put yourself in a spot like that where you alienate a guy that you value. And that's the hard part. With all that said, I think in this second apron era, you worry about smoothing hard feelings later and you do what's fiscally responsible. So I think in the end, it's a long-winded way of saying, let Kessler go find his market. And if he finds his market and you decide the number's too rich, you got to say goodbye and move forward with what you have.
There's Brian Geltzeiler. When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next.